Good morning. Welcome to the land use meeting for Hillsborough County on September 13th. Today we are going to address our land use issues, and we will begin the meeting as I call it to order, although I believe we need to do a roll call first since we do have some hybrid participation. Sir?
Olbermann?
You're here.
Cullen? Hagan? Here. Kemp?
Here.
Myers?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
White?
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to ask our chaplain to, actually, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance and offer an invocation.
Thank you. I'll ask that everyone please stand at this time, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, I pray that you'll guide this board, our staff and stakeholders as we make important decisions this morning on a finite resource. I pray that you will allow us to not only think about those of us that are here on earth today, but also future generations as we make these decisions. As always, I pray for our first responders and members of our armed forces. Pray that you'll guide them and keep them safe each and every day. I ask for these blessings in your heavenly name. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner White. I appreciate that. With that, we'll move on to the very first section, which is withdrawals, continuance, and remands.
Grady.
Mr. Grady, are you available?
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Grady, Development Services. Before we go to the public withdrawals continuances beginning on page 3 of the agenda, we do have 3 changes, addendums to the agenda. The first change is on page 17, item F1, application 22-0089. The applicant is proposing 2 changes to the existing conditions of approval. The first one, condition 1, clarifying the uses regarding existing conditions of approval, permit accessory and conditional AR zoning district uses, and the applicant is proposing revisions to clarify that those uses are to be exclusive to the operation of the public service facility by a public utility as defined by Florida statute section 366.02 2021 as may be amended from time to time. And then also, in addition to that, restricting specific uses that are in the AR category consisting of municipal solid waste facilities, yard waste transfer facility, yard waste composting facility, and yard waste air curtain incinerator. So those uses I just listed would be restricted as part of their proposed revisions. The second change is to condition 1.2 and is clarifying what the perimeter security fence will be made of, clarifying that it'll be a security fence with a wrought iron appearance up to 8 feet. That's the change, that item. The other change is regarding related items, G1A and G1B on page 19 of the agenda. The applicant for both G1A and G1B is requesting a continuance of these 2 items to the December 13th, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting. Those are the changes to the addendum. I will now go through the public withdrawals and continuances beginning on page 3 of the agenda. The first item is item A1, rezoning PD 18-0996. Staff is requesting this item be continued to the October 11th, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A2, rezoning PD 22-0075. This application will be continued by the applicant as a matter of right to the October 11th, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A3, PRS 22-0523. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 11, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A4, PRS 22-0657. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 11, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A5, PRS 22-0738. Staff is requesting this item be continued to the November 3rd, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A6, Major Mod Application 22-06862. This application is continued to the October 13th, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Comp Plan Amendment Public Hearing at 6 p.m. This is being moved to that hearing to be heard with the related comprehensive plan amendment at that meeting on October 13th at 6 p.m. Item A7, Special Use Application 22-0920. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 11th, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A8, PRS 22-0937. This application has been continued by the applicant as a matter of right to the October 11th, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A9, PRS 22-0940. This application has been continued by the applicant as a matter of right to the October 11th, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A10, PRS 22-1006. This application is continued by the applicant as a matter of right to the October 11, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A11, PRS 22-1008. Staff is requesting this item be continued to the October 11, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A12, DRI 22-1081. The staff is requesting this item be continued to the October 11, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A13, PRS 22-1091. This application will be continued by the applicant as a matter of right to the October 11th, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A14, PRS 22-1174. This application will be continued by the applicant as a matter of right to the December 13th, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. Item A15, DRI 22-1278. This application out of order to be heard and has been continued to the November 3rd, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. And item A16, public hearing vacation petition 21-0014. Staff is requesting this item be continued to the October 11th, 2022 Board of County Commissioners Land Use meeting at 9 a.m. That concludes all withdrawals and continuances and changes to the agenda. Thank you.
Move the changes.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner White, a second by Commissioner Myers. Please do a roll call vote.
Overman,
Yes.
Cullen,
Yes.
Hagan,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 7-0.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent agenda, and I'm going to recognize Commissioner White for the announcement of his intention to abstain from voting for item B1, so that this item may be considered as a separate vote after the approval of the remainder of the consent agenda. Commissioner White?
Yes, item B1's a Suncoast item. I've gone over my relationship with Suncoast countless times, so I'm going to need to abstain from B1. So I'll move everything on the consent agenda except for item B1.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner White, a second by Commissioner Cohen. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Overman,
Yes.
Cullen,
Yes.
Hagan,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Excellent. And now we'll take consideration of the consent item B1 with...
Move item B1.
We have a motion by Commissioner Cohen, a second by Commissioner Myers. You can take a roll call vote with with Commissioner White abstaining.
Overman,
Yes.
Cullen,
Yes.
Hagan,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
White.
Abstain?
Thank you. Motion carried 6-0.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We're going to actually move on to the C items of our agenda today, but prior to that, I'm going to ask the clerk to offer or announce or administer the oath for those that will be testifying today.
Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, thank you.
Excellent. Before we begin our first public hearing this morning, I'd like to take the opportunity to remind all of the speakers, including those participating in person at Saunders Library and those participating remotely, of our meeting participation process. When it is your turn to speak, I will recognize you as the speaker. And for those participating in person at Saunders Library, please adhere to the mask requirements and respect our social distancing guidelines. Remain seated, and please do not approach the podium to speak until after I have called on you. And I thank you very much for your participation. With that, we're going to recognize the vacation of public hearing portion of this agenda. Mr. Moreta. or Mr. Grady? Or, sorry, Mr. Grady?
Yes, the next item is agenda item C1, vacating petition 22-0010. It's a vacating petition by Falkenberg Capital. Carry on with Real Estate Services will present this item.
Thank you. You're recognized.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Carrie Allen, Facilities Management and Real Estate Services Department. Item C1 today is vacate ID V220010. This is a petition by Falkenberg Capital, LLC, and Palm River CDD to vacate a portion of the plat of Mission Village Phase 1 subdivision as recorded in Plat Book 110, page 321 of the Public Records of Hillsborough County. The petitioners have submitted this request for the purpose of redeveloping the property to be consistent with and encourage the growing use and economic development of the surrounding area in order to enhance the enjoyment, livability, and needs of the community. The proposed vacate area is located south of Palm River Road and north of Estuary Lakes Drive in Brandon and consists of 421,427 square feet or 9.68 acres. Reviewing departments, agencies, and utility providers have raised no objections to the vacate request. Staff recommends approval of this petition request.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We will, let's see, where are we? Do we have anyone that signed up to speak for C1? No one signed up to speak for on this item that I can see. And with that, we'll close this public hearing and consider comments from the board.
Move approval.
Move approval.
Second.
By Commissioner Smith, a second by Commissioner Myers. Please take a roll call vote.
Overman,
Yes.
Cullen,
Yes.
Hagan,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the E section of this. This is a public hearing for items E1 through E4. With that, Mr. Grady, you're recognized.
The next item then is agenda item E1. It's application number Prs 22-0730. It's a request for a minor modification to a parcel that's located at the northeast corner of Gun Highway, North Hubert Avenue. Michelle Heinrich with county staff will provide a brief presentation of the requested changes and outline the staff's recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Development Services?
Good morning, Michelle Heinrich, Development Services. This is a modification request to PD 05-1102, which is currently permitted for 7,500 square feet of CG, that is commercial general uses, with a certified site plan that reflects a layout for a convenience store, gas canopy, and accessory car wash. Buildings are to resemble residential structures and use a pitched roof. This request is to approve a revised site plan for a freestanding primary use car wash. The car wash will now be located along the eastern PD area with 2 queuing lanes along the north, access via Pres Drive. 20 vacuum spaces and required parking will be centrally located along Gun Highway. In looking at that site plan revision, the following changes are proposed. First, to remove the requirement that buildings resemble a residential structure and use a pitched roof. Secondly, to modify the car wash hours from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., which was for the accessory car wash, to 7:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 9 to 6 on Sundays for the freestanding primary use car wash. Thirdly, to modify the buffering and screening adjacent to the north, and in one area from a 5-foot buffer with 6-foot high masonry wall to a 10-foot wide buffer with an 8-foot high vinyl fence and landscaping, which would be 10 feet in height at the time of planting. And I'm showing on the Elmo because it's probably easier to see rather than when I went over that. That is the buffering and screening along this property line, and this. These are adjacent to 2 single-family homes. So that currently requires a 5-foot buffer here and 15-foot here. And like I said, those are permitted to have screening for a 6-foot high wall. And then under the proposed, along those same property lines, the applicant is proposing a 10-foot wide buffer along both areas, the 6-foot high vinyl fence, and then the screening of landscaping that was, put that this way, make it the same, and the screening that was described, and that's along here, here, and here. So also, as you heard, part of that request is to increase that screening height, going from 6 feet to 8 feet. Also, the applicants proposed to remove an 8-foot high screening treatment that is required along Prs Drive and Hubert Avenue. And that is located here from the access point to the residential area on Pres, and the same over here from the access point to the residential area on Hubert. The applicants also seek to modify the suburban scenic corridor, going from 15 feet to 10 feet, and the use of ornamental trees rather than the canopy, understory, and street trees. And then lastly, to modify the access points from 2 full access points, the one on Pres and Hubert, to 1 access point that would be the full access point and serve for the incoming and outgoing traffic on Pres, and the Hubert Avenue access, which would serve as an emergency bypass exit only. The site does abut Gun Highway, and as noted, with single-family residential to the immediate north of the site. Staff has reviewed the request and finds the revised layout is not compatible with the residential found to the immediate north. Regarding the buffering and screening adjacent to residential properties, staff acknowledges previously reduced buffers of 15 to 5 feet along the north were approved. However, the 5-foot buffer area is limited in size and occurs in the vicinity of the convenience store. This 5 feet leaves little to no room for activities and was screened with a 6-foot high masonry wall. Under the revised plan, the northern area will now be used for 2 queuing lanes separated from residential by a 10-foot wide buffer, the fencing and screening that was mentioned. The queuing lanes are depicted on the site plan to be of an intensity to serve at least 20 waiting cars, which is a more intense use being brought closer to the neighboring residential. Staff does not feel that the impacts expected to occur from the 2 queuing lanes will be sufficiently mitigated with the proposed buffering screening. Also, staff is not supportive of the reduction in the suburban corridor along Gun Highway. There are numerous reasons outlined by the applicant as to justification points for that reduction. To just summarize it very quickly, we would just note that there is nothing on the site plan or the conditions that excuses the project from complying with that scenic corridor. And also the applicant did provide some aerial photographs showing their position that it has not been implemented throughout the corridor. However, in our research, we found that much of those sites predate the scenic corridor preservation requirements or were required at a different standard. Therefore, we feel that the project scale is what is driving the reductions, given that it is a freestanding car wash with 2 queuing lanes and 20 parking spaces. Therefore, we do not recommend approval, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Is the applicant present?
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, sir. You have 15 minutes for your presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mark Bentley, 401 East Jackson Street, Tampa 33602. I represent the owner and developer of the property, the Capitano family. Before I get started, I just want to kind of make a couple clarifications or corrections to what staff had noted to the Commissioners. It's on? Yeah. As you can see on the overhead here, Ms. Heinrich indicated that there was residential property located directly west of Perez Drive, and actually that's commercial property. It's developed as a microbrewery, which is about to open. That was the Capitano's first project with respect to all these properties. And second of all, with respect to the scenic corridor, the existing condition of the PD right now as it stands says that we could essentially have whatever setback necessary as approved by natural resources. So I just want to clarify those 2 points. What I'd like to do is provide an overview of the situation and background and history, and then turn the presentation over to our project planner, Mr. Ryan Manassi. I'd note to the commissioners that we've been working diligently with the neighborhood. There are no objections we're aware of, including the Montgomery family, who's located directly to the north, who supported the existing approval for the property. Per the county, there are no objections registered with the county. There are no objections from any agency but for development services concerning these couple buffer issues. However, as we'll demonstrate, we have addressed compatibility issues with limited hours of operation, additional trees, and increased screening that offset additional buffer separation. Note that there was a taking of a portion of the property by the county in connection with the widening of Gun Highway, which has slightly compressed the site and provided some design challenges. Also note to the commissioners that on the west side of the subject property, as I mentioned, there's a microbrewery. On the east side, there's commercial development. So the only residential are 2 lots located to the north, and we're sensitive to that, which I'll show you. I'd like to talk about the existing versus proposed project and the benefits of the new project. The existing approval consists of a convenience store, car wash, and fueling stations. It was slated to be one of the Capitano's Radiant food stores and gas stations. Note that there are no limitations on the hours of operation for the convenience store, and it can operate 24/7, 5 feet away from the resident's property. The car wash is oriented toward the neighborhood and can operate till 10 every night. The convenience store only has a 5-foot buffer and 6-foot wall, which staff had found compatible in connection with the prior rezoning. We are now proposing an 8-foot fence along with a 10-foot buffer with 10-foot trees at time of planting spaced 6 feet apart, whereas the code only requires the trees to be 20 feet apart and only a 6-foot fence. The existing project also has 2 full access points to Pres Drive and Hubert Avenue. In consideration of the area's residents, we have agreed to eliminate the Hubert access but for emergency purposes. And also, as the neighbors have requested, we will bring Perez Drive to county standards. Importantly, from a transportation standpoint, the proposed project will provide a significant reduction in traffic. According to the county trip generation provided in your backup, trips will be reduced 3,267 trips, daily trips, more than the proposed development, with a reduction of roughly 300 trips in the AM and 300 in the PM, which would back up Hubert and Perez. As mentioned, the existing project has unrestricted hours but for 10 p.m. for the car wash. In consideration of the residents in the area, our client has agreed to limit hours of operation to 7:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sunday. So certainly this wouldn't affect the residents' quality of life after 6 o'clock in the evening and 7 o'clock in the evening. And here again, there are no objections from the residents, and we've worked hard over the past several months to address their concerns. So we believe that the proposed use with its limited hours of operation, no traffic on Hubert Street, reduction of 3,200 vehicle trips, daily vehicle trips, and the elimination of a convenience store and car wash oriented toward the neighborhood and enhanced screening is certainly more preferable to the residents and their quality of life. There is a suggestion in the staff report which speculates that providing an additional 10-foot buffer to the northern property owned by the Montgomery family may mitigate possible noise impacts. The report says noise is, quote, is expected from 2 queuing lanes. I'd like to point out to the board, there are 2 lanes. However, the lane to the north is an emergency bypass lane to be used in the event of an operational malfunction of the facility, similar to a bank or a Starbucks. Returning to the speculation about possible noise issues, first and foremost, the client intends to meet county sound limits applicable to commercial property adjacent to residential. There are no objections to the project, which the county has confirmed. Limited hours of operation would eliminate any noise concerns as well. Also, the intent of the county's buffer provisions is not for noise attenuation, but to simply provide context between projects in terms of bulk and scale and to mitigate visual impacts. We are doing that here by providing larger and significantly more trees and taller solid fence while still maintaining a 10-foot separation to the driveway. If the 10-foot related to a building separation, that would be a concern, but it's not. So realistically, commissioners, providing an additional separation will not reduce noise at all. And in fact, a sophisticated sound meter would not even register a change resulting from such a short distance of 10 feet. Now I'd like to introduce our professional planner, Mr. Ryan Manassi, Director of Development with Johnson Pope. And he's going to go over what I generally explained as well as the proposed site plan. Thank you very much. Ryan?
Thank you. Good morning, County Commissioners. Ryan Manassi, Director of Development with Johnson Pope, 401 East Jackson Street, Suite 3100, Tampa 33602. And again, as Mark stated, I'd like to show you on the overhead and just recap you through the existing site plan, then we'll go on to the proposed. So as you see here, some of the things I'd like to point out are the uses that are currently approved. Is that convenience store with that accessory car wash, and then the gas station stalls right here. If you'll notice that the use is immediately abutting these residential uses to the rear. And what I did here on the screen is I overlaid the green would be the approved buffers for this approved PD as it stands, and the red dashed line would be the code requirement as it stands today. As you can see, the site is uniquely shaped, and to get internal circulation properly accommodated, it does have some design constraints. Additionally, the setbacks, as Mark stated, 5 feet from the rear residential, I'd like to point out, as well as the 2 access points along Pres and Hubert. And then going to the proposed, center that for you. Again, the green is showing the code requirement, and then the red dashed line would be the proposed setbacks that we are proposing in this PRS. Again, I'll kind of walk you through circulation. The proposed full access is along Perez Drive, so off of Gun Highway here, you'd access ingress and egress fully here. The 2 car queuing lanes would be to the north against the residential. Again, as Mark stated, the 2 queuing lines, the one immediately to the residential would be used as a secondary point, as well as there is an attendant that would be on site to help traffic circulation and such. The menu boards that are located here do not produce any audible sounds. They're simply for transactions. So again, for sound reasoning, there's no concern with that. To discuss the variation to the north, and I know Michelle's already alluded to it as well as Mark, but visually, again, the 10-foot buffer that we're providing is the red dashed line, and that would provide an 8-foot vinyl fence. So the code requires a 6-foot. We're requesting to increase that height and then provide that vegetation or those plantings at 10 feet tall at installation every 6 foot. So again, we are requesting a shorter width, but we are providing denser vegetation to help screening and the buffering from this use. We removed the full access of ingress and egress on Hubert Avenue. As you can see here, there is a gate that would be permanently closed unless it's for emergency reasoning, and that's stated on the site plan as well. The building setbacks through this are indicated in a more detailed fashion. You're going to see the building setbacks on the front and rear of the property, and when I'm speaking building on the proposed car wash area, is 60 feet in the front, which would be along Gun, 60 feet to the rear along those from those residential properties. From Perez, 160 feet, and then 18 feet on Hubert. In consideration for the neighborhood, and we understand that this is a residential neighborhood to the rear, We do have these commercial properties, as Mark stated. This is a microbrewery along here. And then there's, I believe it's auto sales right here, commercial use. But in consideration for the neighborhood, through different designs, we moved the car wash operation itself as much as we could to this intersection area of Gunn and Hubert. Additionally, the dryers for the car wash, as you may know, when you go in the car wash, the last part of it would be the dryers. Those are facilitated at this point, and that way keeping any kind of potential impacts from this car wash towards Gunn Highway and these commercial uses, to include the vacuum area, which is roughly in this area. So that way everything is orientated towards Gunn Highway and not near the residential, as much as design can allow. So again, as we circulate through the site, the queuing lanes, the emergency access through the car wash, and then through the vacuum stall area, there's additional parking here that's required to make the total provided parking. And then again, you'd exit back out onto Pres. So again, no traffic would be on Hubert unless it was for emergency purposes. And then discussing the variation briefly along Gunn Highway. As you can see, again, the red dashed line is what we're proposing, and the green, as you can see, is just that minimal 5-foot reduction that we're requesting. As Mark stated, this is a due in part of the right-of-way taking from previously, as well as we have a forced utility line coming from this property on our property through, which had to get certain design criteria in the way, in far as engineering and such, certain type of plantings. Obviously, some trees, those root systems could impact those utilities that are buried. So what we're requesting is that reduction from 15 foot to 10 feet, and then providing those ornamental trees, eight trees per 100 lineal feet. So with that being said, the proposed site plan decreases the transportation trip generation for the use, as Mark stated, while providing larger setbacks for the car wash structure compared to the approved setbacks. And it provides enhanced buffering and screening to the rear of the property with a taller fence and more vegetation. We'd be happy to answer any questions, and we would respectfully request your approval on this.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes remaining. Are there any other comments that you'd like to make prior to hearing from proponents or opponents of the project, which I do not see anyone signed up?
Just commissioners, just to make a couple points, and there's no point in using up the 2 minutes. As I mentioned, there's obviously no objections registered to us or the county. Actually, there's support from the Montgomery family. Who'd be if anyone's going to be impacted, it's them, located adjacent to the northern property line where the queuing lanes are. The project with sensitive design and limited hours will ensure compatibility with the surrounding area. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I don't see anyone signed up as a proponent or opponent as far as testimony is concerned. Is anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this matter? If so, have they been sworn in?
No one in the audience.
No one in the audience. Thank you very much. For that, we will hear from Development Services regarding amended recommendations.
No amended comments.
No comments at this time. Okay. And since we have no comments, I assume we have no rebuttals at this point. So with that, I will move on to board discussion. Commissioner Smith, you're recognized.
Yeah. So we heard the applicants talking about no objection, and but then we heard from the local residents. Then we heard the applicant's representative say there was support from the Montgomery family, but I'm not seeing anything in the case file to indicate support by any residents.
I don't believe that we have that as part of the record for the file.
Mm-hmm. So we have neither support nor objection from the neighborhood, and there was some talk about there would be a traffic reduction, a reduction in trips. Is that what our transportation engineers find?
Yes, I'm going to that right now. I believe that was based on the change from a gas station with convenience store to to a car wash only. I'm sorry, the transportation report showed a difference in daily trips, but an increase in AM and PM peak hour trips. No, I'm sorry, I believe that math is wrong. It's just a decrease in all three of those. Yeah.
All right. And the design exceptions that I see are leaving the road substandard but adding a 5-foot sidewalk?
That is what we were supportive of, yes. And I will say regarding the conditions, the applicant, if the board is inclined to consider this, like to know that the applicant provided us proposed conditions of approval last night. We have had some look at those and believe that there's, if the board's inclined to continue this, we believe that those conditions would still require some work to make them conform with the project, so.
So if we were not going to deny this outright, the next course of action would be a continuance
Yes,
to
ma'am.
work out the conditions. I'm personally agreeing with the staff recommendations and the Planning Commission that there isn't any benefit to the neighborhood or the area to reduce the buffers and setbacks, as well as the design standards of the, making the buildings look more like the neighborhood with pitched roofs and stuff. So I would be inclined to just deny it outright today, but I'm going to see if any of my fellow board members have anything else to say.
Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
I could second that, but maybe if there's a continuance to try to remedy this or at least look at it, I'd like to also know, I mean, we don't know when this was done before. I mean, it could have been a real pitched battle to try to make it be more responsive to what was being done. And then all of a sudden in a quiet time, it's just all removed, all that. And I'll just, one of the things that strikes me is just having a vinyl fence instead of a wall,
Yeah.
which I think is really, not only the design standards, but having a vinyl fence, I just think really reduces both the longevity and the maintenance, because what we see happen to those in a few years, but also the kind of investment in the protective nature of the property. The thing I'd like to, and this is kind of, I just like to point this out over and over and over again. When we see traffic counts, and this has this tremendous drop in traffic counts, which we know that that's what people ask about all the time. I just like to, when they're talking about traffic counts, it's traffic counts coming directly to the property, correct? Because I'll just say that having the traffic counts drop, this is just something to watch for in every single one of these, is, one of the things that I have been really looking at and trying to see is, and we as a board have expressed wanting to promote this, is trip capture, mixed use, those kinds of things. And I'll just say that whenever we have those kinds of things that we say are values that we desire and want to see as we move into the future, those are always going to be attracting more traffic. And to the extent that we don't do that, we have less traffic. So what happens is if we move for placemaking, for neighborhood commercial, for all that, we are going to have traffic counts that are higher. So is that, I mean, Mr. Gormley, I don't know if somebody is out there, but I mean, it just automatically, to put a convenience store or a little commercial something used is going to increase the traffic and decrease, for instance, trip capture that we might have in the neighborhood because we would have a commercial generator there. Is that are those two things always true?
So commissioners, I believe, the numbers that we provide are just gross numbers, in, out, and AM, PM peaks. Some degree of those trips, depending on the use, will be trip captured, trips that are going down the road and driving by and stopping in because of the opportunity. We don't have trip capture broken out in those numbers, but we believe that a use like this would expect that there would be some degree of trip capture.
Actually, I guess when I talk about trip capture is people that live there not having to go further and fill up the roads. That's what I mean when I say trip capture, not how many the commercial place captures, but that we start to have more integrated land uses, and that seems to be in total contradiction to how we do our traffic studies. Which just automatically, whenever we put neighborhood commercial, whenever we put mixed use in, we're automatically always going to get, I'll just say for the record here, and I'll keep pointing this out, we're going to have more traffic. So you can make it less traffic by having a car wash, for instance, as a single use, than putting a convenience store and a gas station in here. But let's say you wanted to put 3 little neighborhood commercial places in here. You're going to have increased traffic, but it might be something you want to do. I'm not talking about this plan in particular, but I think this plan is illustrious. We just keep hitting this all the time, I notice, and it's kind of the way we do our traffic studies. It's how much that property attracts. So if we want to do more neighborhood commercial, more integrated land use, with mixed use, we are going to have more traffic at that place, but overall, we may not have more traffic that is using more of the road, because instead of going to the commercial entity there, if they live in that neighborhood, they're going to be going further down the road to get those things. So I'm just pointing that out. Because so many times this is just really clear, and I just wanted to put that in the record. And again, this is like something about how we do our traffic studies that I feel like are not helpful for us in terms of making decisions about how we move forward. But with that, I could support the denial, but I might feel, and the board might feel more comfortable with a continuance. And I just want to say I do appreciate the staff looking at this carefully about the impacts and the variations, and bringing that information to us.
Thank you. Commissioner Cohen, you recognize.
Yeah, just a quick comment on the traffic discussion before we get to the issue of the continuance or denial. I think that part of the reason that the traffic discussions never make any sense to anybody is because we're always talking about we're talking about what the increase in traffic is over what's approved, right, not over what's there now. So there's always going to be more traffic, even if the argument is being made that you're actually going to have less traffic than what might be built. And so the whole thing is sort of a conversation outside of reality. That said, I do think, because the conditions came in last night, that we ought to continue and let the staff look at it. The issues that are at stake here are the types of things that generally could be worked out. They're not the types of things that ought to kill the whole project without a vote from us. And then secondly, as to Commissioner Smith's point about the support, perhaps that could be clarified if it's continued. There was an assertion made on the record that there's support in the neighborhood. Perhaps that could be substantiated along the trust but verify line of thinking when we consider this again. So I would support a continuance.
Commissioner Myers, you're recognized.
I'll make that a motion.
Okay.
Okay. That was the motion I was going to make.
Okay. Oh, okay. Excellent. Okay, so I have Commissioner Cohen, Myers, Smith. You're recognized.
And just to be clear, just for this commissioner's vote, when this comes back in a continuance, I am not sitting here thinking, well, as long as we have a few more conditions on, or see what the conditions are last night, I'm going to be a yes, just so that the applicant understands. I'm still not comfortable with losing all the design standards and features that were there in a residential neighborhood. So maybe they could, come up with some of that. Also, when we're doing design exceptions, that for a project that's going to put some amount of traffic on the roads, on substandard roads, to me, I think we need to move beyond, okay, 5 foot, let them add a 5-foot sidewalk on their piece and it's good. I think we need to be accommodating more of a multi-use path wherever we can, and get that 10-foot path wherever we can. So yeah, I just want to clarify that I'm not like, oh, okay, as long as we get a few more conditions, I'm good. I'm still not comfortable with reducing the buffers, and want a little more understanding of how this 15-foot scenic corridor on Gun Highway is going to be maintained in a scenic way. So I just want to put all that out there as a bit of advice to what comes back. Thank you.
And I had a couple of comments. I'm going to support the continuance because I think there's an opportunity here to find a compromise that works. And I'm going to need some information too. I hate concrete walls. But I do understand when you have a lot of vehicles going by, it may be more appropriate to have a concrete wall versus a vinyl fence for safety reasons, if nothing else. The buffering, I think, does need to take into consideration that you will have cars idling for a while, even though it's during the day rather than late at night. And clearly, there's going to be a lot less traffic than there would be than a convenience store and a gas station. So I do see from the previous approval that there would be a reduction, but everyone going there is going there to wash their car. So it's going to generate traffic there. The bigger issue that I'm not clear on, and it may be just because I missed that sentence or that paragraph, is the issue that we heard the applicants say that they will be maintaining or bringing the road to county standards. And in my opinion, what I perceive as being county standards is inadequate when it comes to safety and Vision Zero guidelines that we have. Does that mean we're going to have a wide sidewalk? We have a microbrewery across the street. And people will be coming into Pres, with a car. So a sidewalk is absolutely necessary for Pres, and more than likely for Hubert as well. So just to make sure that in the process of coming back for accommodations, that whatever county standard means, it means a standard that would include sidewalk and protection and walkability to and from the neighborhood, because you're moving into the neighborhood from Gun Highway. And people may be walking along that way, and they will be encountering cars pulling into the business. So, or maybe even walking across the street from the microbrewery or whatever. Or traffic will be coming from the microbrewery over to wash their cars before and after washing their cars. So I think the sidewalk or the road standard, in my opinion, would be having clarity on that, what that looks like and what that accommodation is going to be, I think is one of the key areas that I'd be interested in hearing from. But I do recognize that Gun Highway and the scenic route, given that there's utilities in that area, sometimes can be challenging. So in whatever is negotiated, taking into consideration the utilities that are in there and the ability to accommodate that, I think is also important clarification that may be helpful. Seeing no other comments, we have a motion to continue by Commissioner Cohen and a second by Commissioner Myers.
And the date will be October 11th at 9 a.m.
Excellent, thank you very much. Please take a roll call vote.
Overman,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Hagan,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you very much, and we will see you on October 11th.
Thank you very much.
The next item is E2. Mr. Grady?
Yes, the next agenda item is agenda item E2. It's Prs Application 22-0938, the applicant Salem Holdings LLC. The request is the parcel is located on the east US Highway 92 on the south side. Parcels east of County Road 579 on the south side of US 92 south of I-4. The request is to modify the site plan to remove a permitted contractor's office with open storage that was specifically shown in the site plan, to modify the site plan to accommodate other permitted commercial general uses. Again, the PD is permitted for commercial general uses. Therefore, again, the request is to modify the site plan to accommodate those uses ostensibly for the immediate future. There's an existing car sales lot that's being developed on this property and also on the adjacent property to the west. And these changes would accommodate continued use of that use on the property. Staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions and available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have a presentation by Development Services, or was that your summary?
That was our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Is the applicant present?
Good morning.
Good morning. Have you been sworn, sir?
Yes, I've been sworn. Matt Newton, law firm of Shoemaker, Loop & Kendrick, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 2800. So this application today kind of has two components, a backwards-facing component and then a frontwards-facing component. As discussed in the staff report, we're here today as a part of a larger process, which is backwards-facing, to remedy an ongoing code enforcement problem. This is a necessary step in a larger process that will not be completed today, but to proceed with getting this property into conformance, this is a necessary component. The forward-facing process is to maintain as much flexibility as possible for future redevelopment in the future that would be consistent with the mixed-use future land use designation. As Commissioner mentioned, we are strongly in favor as a community in encouraging mixed-use developments, and maintaining flexibility on the site post-compliance will ensure that this property is more easily redeveloped in that vision. As Mr. Grady mentioned, this is a eastern component of a single folio. To the west is CG. Currently on the east side, it is zoned PD 970407, which allows all CG uses plus an open storage. Some background on the code enforcement issue. Back in 2014, this was resembling two separate facilities. On the western side was the CG component, which was developed for auto repair. On the eastern side was that contractor's office with the open storage component, a use that really is not compatible with what we're seeing in the area today. And at some point, it was combined into a unified auto sales, auto repair use, which is a approved use on both land uses. However, this parking lot and this development did not go through the permitting process, which was met with swift code enforcement action. As we stand here today, there are daily fines accruing, hundreds of dollars each day accruing for this code enforcement violation. The way to remedy that code enforcement violation would be to do what was not done in the past, which was work with staff, work with development services, get a approved site plan on file that addresses ingress and egress, that addresses maneuvering, and that addresses impervious and pervious ratios. And only then will those fines stop, and then they can be addressed through the normal process. Motivated by those daily fines, the owner went to work with staff to get a site plan approved, but was stopped in its tracks by the existing 1997 site plan, which Mr. Grady mentioned envisioned only the open storage contractor's office. And most relevant for today, does not allow any cross access between the west and the east. It provides for a fence, it provides for screening and buffering. So there is no type of ingress and egress between these uses. Rather, as the comprehensive plan tries to avoid, people would have to go back on the road and then back on and so on to go in between these two parcels, which is not good planning. So what we're proposing today is to modernize this eastern portion, allow free access between the western and eastern sides, compliant with future land use policies 15-12.1 and .2. Along the north here, rather than the 22 feet setback, which was approved in 1997, we're expanding that to 56 feet, which is consistent with the corridor preservation plan. And then, of course, make sure that a 20-foot type B landscape buffer is preserved along the south and along the east, which provides buffering and screening between dissimilar land uses. I will acknowledge I did understand that there was concerns from the neighborhood, which are ongoing, relating to the loading and unloading of vehicles on this site. That is a bit of a side effect of not having an approved site plan that had gone through services. Speaking with development services, I understand, and there's already been some work begun in ensuring that a certified site plan that's gone through development review will accommodate ingress and egress, loading and unloading, make sure that the auto turns are on point, and make sure that this is a safe operating site moving forward. Those concerns expressed by the neighborhood are reasonable and understandable. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. That is, you have a few more minutes on applicant if you need it, but with that, I'll hear from any proponents or opponents on this item, although I do not see anyone signed up to speak. Are there anyone in the audience at Saunders that is interested in speaking to item E2?
There's a gentleman coming to speak.
Okay. And sir, please introduce yourself and indicate whether you're a proponent or opponent to this item.
Hello, my name is Joe Golden. I'm a general contractor with the state of Florida. I'm here representing the owners at 12019 US Highway 92. Due to this code enforcement and problem of the parking lot being put in a couple, 2 or 3 years ago, he's saying safety and issues, still problems. We're having flooding problems. The property that they're wanting to redo and get a site plan for is putting hundreds of thousands of gallons of water down the roadway into a FDOT with no water retention, which is causing all this problem to the neighboring property. This was 2 years ago. That's all the stuff that we had to go through 2 years ago. And then on the 2-year anniversary, just about 2 weeks ago, we got this side. This was on the east side of the property that I was showing you. Now this is on the west side of our property. This picture here is where Evo Motors is at, and there's a ditch going down the east side of their property with no retention area there, nothing to slow or calm the water down. It's just going straight into the DOT ditch. This photo would be showing the debris at the chain link fence where it's kind of stopped it up a bit, and then it's overflowed and going into the DOT ditch. It's undermining a light pole there and some communication structures. We're concerned about who's going to pay for these damages and how the county is going to help us out with what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that's present to speak?
No one else in the audience.
Okay. And is there a Development Services amended recommendation?
Commission, it's not a necessarily amended recommendation, but to address the concerns that the neighbor, the speaker raised about stormwater on the site. That is something that will be required to be addressed once the site comes in for construction plan review. We'll look at the existing conditions, any impervious surface that was added without going through the permitting process, and will require that the stormwater design not increase the post-development flow and also have adequate stabilization in place so that the water flowing off isn't creating channels like was shown in the photo. So it doesn't change our recommendation, but just wanted to address that. That will be something, if this is approved, that is looked at in the construction plan process and will be required to be held to the requirements of the county stormwater technical manual.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any comments back as a rebuttal from the applicant? I can't see. Yeah, there we go.
Good morning, Matt Newton, Shoemaker, Lipton Kendrick. Just to emphasize what Mr. Gormley just pointed out, as you'll note from the proposed site plan, substantial portion is reserved for a proposed stormwater pond as depicted on the bubble plan. These are concerns that will be thoroughly addressed at site review.
All right, thank you very much. And given how much water we have and how saturated our grounds are, I'm sure that they would love to get this taken care of as quickly as possible. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
I was just a little taken aback that we didn't see more of that. I just would have expected it that a neighbor wouldn't have to come to show those pictures or explain more of the issue to us. But one thing I was wondering about, because it was even highlighted by the applicant, unpermitted disposal of asphalt materials. And I wasn't sure, that seemed to be a major issue with this. Is that, what does that speak to? In terms of I just didn't even see where that was brought into this. That's why I was just curious about that.
I believe that was a citation from code enforcement, and that type of citation to me indicates that they were disposing of materials on site, storing materials on site that were not permitted. I'm looking at an aerial of the area. I don't necessarily see stockpiles of asphalt, but there's clearly asphalt down.
Right.
And so that is something that they would need to permit with us. I believe that, again, the citation that was issued was for perhaps some activities that took place before it landed in the car lot that it appears as today.
I was just a little confused. So it does look like there's stormwater retention now where there hasn't been. And there's nothing that, that this board can do at this time, except to approve a new plan in terms of having this dealt with, because it just looks like I would say the neighbors are just going to have to pursue the contractor in terms of remedies. Is that correct?
If there's a private issue between the two that's outside of our regulatory realm and it's private interests, that is something that they would be able to pursue on their own privately. We will look at, assuming it's approved and based on the enforcement action taken thus far, identified that there's problems there that need to be corrected. But as to any damage to neighbors' property, that would be a private matter for them to address.
As it's a bit shocking and looks substantial. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Kemp. Commissioner Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you. So how is code enforcement not already addressing these complaints for 2 years at this property?
I believe that they have been cited. They've gone to the Code Enforcement Board, and there are fines running on the property. So that enforcement action has been taken. The result of that is a financial, say, incentive to bring the property into compliance, and that's the situation that they're in today.
And so if we were to approve this today and then count on the permitting process, our county's permitting process, to really stringently ensure that that this flooding of the neighboring properties and even pollution of the neighboring properties is stopped by the permitting, the neighbor who has these concerns would no longer have any input or comment into any of that process, correct?
It is not a public hearing process. If this zoning were to be approved and it goes to construction plan permitting, you're correct. That's not a public hearing process. It's basically a plan review process to determine whether it complies with our regulatory requirements and technical requirements.
I mean, personally, I think ideally, I'd like the developer to take a month continuance to work with that neighbor to ensure this is the only time that neighbor is going to have any input into conditions, making sure the stormwater and the runoff is going to be constructed in a way that at least gives him some comfort moving forward. This is his only opportunity, is in this process. I'd like to give them a month to talk together and work together and ensure that neighbor that they're going to be a good neighbor and that there will be conditions and the site will be constructed in a way that will stop what he's been putting up with for years. I hate to bring the neighbor back up, but maybe just to check and see if he'd be interested in that. Is that all right, Madam Chair?
Yeah, but I would like to ask a question before we do that, so that could get addressed, if it's at all possible. Yes, I'll come back to your question to ask the neighbor to opine on this. But I mean, this application literally is to bring the property possibly into an opportunity to meet some type of code requirement, whether it be our land use or whether it's to stop the code violation that is allowing the property to be in 1997, rules that we don't have anywhere in our land code right now as far as an applicant. This is in order to address the fact that there are code violation outstanding code violations that cannot be complied with without making a land use change, without making a PD change. So they cannot address the code until they make this change, if I understand this correctly. Is that accurate? Is that what's happening here?
Their current plan development, PD development plan does not accommodate this current configuration of the property. That's correct.
Right, so they can't address the code violations with the current approval, land code approval, correct?
Right, they would need to, if they were to develop the site as it exists today, through permitted development of the site as it exists today, they would have to comply with the plan development as it exists today, which wouldn't accommodate the unified site development plan.
Right, and so in order to fix this has to move first, and then the plan development application would address the potential of updating not only to our current land code, but also our stormwater retention, which would address the neighbor's concern potentially in its design at that point. And at that application, then the neighbor would have an opportunity to correct? It would come back to us for a PD approval.
This would be the last approval for the board to amend the PD.
The PD.
If this were approved and they go into site construction, it would be an administrative permitting process. We can certainly get the gentleman's contact information and keep him informed of the progress, but it doesn't provide an opportunity for him to have input.
Okay, so in this application process, has Development Services identified that the stormwater issue can be addressed with the current PD application as it stands?
We believe, yes, it can. They still need to design and permit the stormwater system, but there's nothing that we've seen that makes us believe that they would not be able to do that. In fact, we fully believe that they're able to do that.
That was my concern, to be able to address the neighbor's concern, if we can get there. Commissioner Smith.
So may I ask the gentleman a question, if he was willing to come back to the microphone?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And I just feel like, your concerns have not been addressed for years. And so I would like to ask you, as you hear our conversation, I think we're all pretty confident, well, we're all very confident that once this is approved in the new configuration with the stormwater pond, that our county permitting process will ensure that the stormwater drainage and pollution issues that you've identified so clearly will be addressed. So that could start now, but as you've heard me wondering, you would be pretty well done. They could keep you informed, but you would be done providing input. So I'm just going to ask you, would you like a month to work closer with the applicant to ensure that you're satisfied, or would you like us to start today getting to that permitting phase where we feel it will be remedied?
This has been ongoing for 2, 3, 4. I think I've seen something all the way back to 2014 with them changing land alteration. I guess in the last couple of years, we've got more rain than we did prior to that. What I would like to do as of today is make an announcement on the liability that it's causing. I know that it was done illegally and it did not go through the code and was not built correctly when they paved the parking lot. But at this point, there's, I don't want to speculate, but there's $250,000 to $500,000 of damages done to my clients because of this land alteration use, that we have to find out if they're going to take responsibility of their negligence and take care of all of that. But going forward, it needs to be the enforcement of the code enforcement. There's nothing getting done. It's like it's lost in a file. It's getting stacked on the desk. It's going here. It's going there. The code enforcement case was closed because the land alteration case is still going on with Development Services. It's just something we can apply all these fines, but if something don't get done, then the people downhill from the water problem is just going to keep getting flooded out.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry that we were not able to do anything about the legal issues. That has to be settled in another forum, another court, as far as I understand. But if Development Services will take the gentleman's contact information to keep him informed of the process moving forward, I think maybe after all, the best thing that we can do is get this moving as fast as possible. So I'll move approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Smith, a second by Commissioner Kemp. Any further discussion? Please take a roll call vote.
Alderman?
Yes.
Cohen?
Yes.
Hagan? Commissioner Hagan? Kemp?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you, Board. Mr. Grady, item E3.
Yes, the next item, agenda item E3, Prs Application 22-0954. So request to modify a PD that's on the east side of Robert Toll Road. Again, the parcel is located on the east side of Robert Toll Road, which is a DOT frontage road that ultimately accesses to the south of Bloomingdale Avenue. It's east of I-75. The request specifically is to reduce, the project is approved for 40 townhomes. The applicant is requesting to reduce that to 26 townhomes and to modify the access points by adding a second access to Robert Toll Drive and removing cross-access points to the northeast and south to the adjacent development. In review of these changes, staff determined that based on the site characteristics and development pattern, the cross-access points were not feasible and is not objecting to removal of those, and also is not objecting to the addition of the second access point to Robert Toll Road. Therefore, staff is recommending approval subject to conditions, and there's no other presentation, and we're available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And is the applicant present?
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Tu. My office address is 14031 North Delmabry Highway, Tampa, Florida 33618. I'm here representing the applicant, Frank DeBose, who is here with me today. As Mr. Grady said, subject site is 200 feet southwest of Robert Toll Drive and Pond Ridge Drive intersection. Total land is 3.1 acres. Current zoning is PD with a future land use of UMU 20. It is in the urban service area. The applicant is requesting a minor modification to PD 060313 to reduce the number of townhomes from 40 to 26 with two access driveways on Robert Toll Drive. There are no cross-access connections proposed. We met with DOT in July. They have no objection to our petition. We concur with staff's recommendation of approval. Therefore, we respectfully request your approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else there who would like to speak during the applicant's time period? You still have almost 14 minutes.
Do you want to speak? There is a gentleman who wants to speak in opposition.
Okay. So there's no other applicant presentation? Okay, so I'm going to ask, I don't have anyone signed up to speak on this other than the applicant, but the proponent or opponent, and please identify yourself and provide whether you're doing a proponent or opponent a testimony. Have you been sworn too?
Yes. My name is Mario Marcia, and I'm in opposition of this application. I am a resident of Valhalla. Location is 4609 Bornstead Drive. When I bought this property a few years ago, fell in love with the scenic view of my backyard. However, that is now in jeopardy. I bought it with that particular property value, and if that gets eliminated, my property value would most likely go down. There is also the issue of traffic. If they build 26 more townhomes in that plot of land, we would probably see an increase in traffic, about 52 additional cars, if not even more. There's only one road that connects that to other roads, only one way in and out. There's also the issue of the environment. I've personally seen owls, hawks, and other wildlife in there. If that plot of land gets destroyed, we would essentially lose all that wildlife. Also, what kind of studies have been done in order to prevent this? Any environmental studies, any sewage, potable water, things that would destroy the environment or would cause any hectic to our community that has been established for more than 15 years. I respectfully ask the commission to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents or opponents in the audience that would wish to speak?
There's other speakers who wish to speak. There's 2 more speakers.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sworn. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with the commission. My name is Don Smith. I live at 4611 Barnstead Drive. We are directly affected by the building. Development must occur, but there are some concerns that we have. 3 of them are environmental. By the way, the 3 of us are speaking for our board, 7-person homeowners board, and today. We have their proxy, basically. So the 3 environmental concerns are the following, and this is not directly related to the access points that you've mentioned, ma'am. We have no issue with the access points, just basically the procedure by which the approval has gotten this far. Number 1, the county EPA assessor, young woman alone, we observed her doing the assessment. Buyers or somebody else, a group of people, I think it was 3 people, directly pressured that assessor in real time. We observed it, she commented on it, and thanked us for backing her up when the buyer group, I don't know if it's a buyer's, but 3 other people who were not from the county were there during the assessment asking for modifications to the assessment in real time. I don't know if that's standard procedure. It doesn't seem like appropriate due diligence without influence. So that's 1. 2, as Martin said, the owls and hawks are definitely back there. I'm not an environmental warrior, but they live there. And you'll hear from Shay, she'll talk about that. The third point is we have a definitive risk of increased bat infestation. I can show you a picture, but I'm sure the commission is familiar with the ramp and road development that's occurred over the last 6 to 7 months with the removal of the trees along 301 that rolls onto 75. The tree removal has generated a new bat infestation in 11 of our buildings. It's $1,800 per year to remove the bats. That will be exacerbated significantly with the removal of this green space. I got it, it's an urban development space, but it's a green space. And that will cause our homeowners association, we're not wealthy, we live in townhomes. So we're not poor, but we're not wealthy. So it's gonna crush us financially to deal with this stuff as we deal with flooding and other issues. So that's an issue. So additional tree removal will be a concern. We have 87 buildings, by the way. 87, 11 are currently infested from the recent tree removal. The other 2 concerns are sewage and drainage. So we had, and I don't know the name of the development, we had another development put in. The study was done for sewage and drainage. I guess it's just on the plot that the neighborhood was developed on. And that directly affected our sewage to the point that it started backing up on our properties. I don't know if that's been evaluated for this. My expectation, it should have been. If it hasn't, I would ask that it be done so that I don't end up with somebody's sewage coming into my house. Lastly, the creek bed, right now with the heavy rains, as you've noted, is flooding pretty significantly. Right now, it's about a 4-foot elevation from the high point where the creek floods to my back door, Martin's back door, and the rest of the folks on Barnstead, particularly in our little zone. That should be evaluated during a heavy rainstorm so that you can actually see it. I can take pictures and bring it back if that's useful. And then the last bit is procedural. None of the folks in the neighborhood knew that we were going to final approval until we saw a sign go up on the back street that we all drive on. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this discussion, but I would ask that we be given an opportunity and consider these mitigating and extenuating circumstances to be able to come back and comment after those additional studies have been done, if they haven't already been done. Again, I don't know. I'm just a citizen. So that's my commentary. Again, Don Smith, 4611 Barnstead Drive. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents that wish to speak or proponents? And please indicate when you come up to speak.
One more person's coming to speak.
There are 8 minutes remaining for, actually there's more than that, but okay.
Hi, my name is Shay Smith. I am a resident of Valhalla Townhome Community. I live at 4611 Barnstead Drive. I'm speaking in opposition to this proposal. We have not had enough time to consider this project, and I don't think that there has been due consideration for the impact to the residents in our neighborhood. As Don Smith said a minute ago, he and I were present during the county environmental assessment. We witnessed the woman being pressured to push the boundary of the wetland area further out towards the edge of the property in consideration. We also spoke with her, and she told us that the buyers had wanted her to push it further and further out towards the creek bed, even though the wetlands area exceeded further away from the creek bed. So I would like to just speak for a minute about the environmental impact that this will have. If this project is allowed to proceed, it will have significant impact on the wildlife in the area by destroying the balance of the local ecosystem and negatively impacting biodiversity. Research shows that urbanization impacts biodiversity and ecosystems service both directly and indirectly. The direct impacts primarily consist of habitat loss and degradation, altered disturbance regimes, modified soil, and other physical transformations caused by the expansion of urban areas. Indirect impacts include changes in water and nutrient availability, increases in abiotic stressors such as air pollution, increases in competition for non-native species, and changes in herbivore and predation rates. One of the critical prerequisites to ensure the preservation of the ecosystems that are of critical importance to the neighborhood, wildlife, and to the homeowners is to not exceed the urban capacity in the area. The urban capacity of the area has already been exceeded due to the highway expansion towards the existing townhome community. As Don said, the neighborhood is already experiencing the effects of diminished wildlife habitats in the form of costly and destructive bat infestations. I would also like to note that the area that has been shown on the maps that were presented earlier do not accurately represent the topography of the area. Can I show a map? So this isn't a very good. This is not a very good picture clearly, but what I'd like to show you is that that is where we live, and this is the area under consideration. And right now, it looks like this is all green space. However, this is the only remaining green space, the area under consideration, because this space has been negatively impacted by the highway expansion. The water here is no longer here, and the trees have been removed. So there has been significant destruction to the wildlife habitat in this entire area. And if we, all the way down here, because this whole expansion comes much further down, all the way down to Bloomingdale Avenue and 301. So this is the remaining green space area for the wildlife in this townhome community. So if this is removed and we get rid of this, there's going to be nowhere for the wildlife to go, and it's going to be incredibly destructive to the townhomes and the current residents who are already experiencing difficulties. Turn off here. Due to these considerations, our community would request a further opportunity for consideration of this entire project and the opportunity to fully prepare an opposition that we can present. Thank you.
Thank you. There are 3 or 4 minutes remaining. Are there any other opponents present to speak to this item?
No other presenters in the audience.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Did we have any proponents available to speak?
No one's identifying themselves in the audience.
Okay, thank you. Development Services? I'm sorry, yes, Development Services?
Nothing additional, thank you.
And may we hear from the applicant as far as a rebuttal is concerned?
Hello again, Mai for the record. We appreciate the neighbors' comments. However, if we're looking at the site on the Elmo, the site is in red, and the areas that the neighbors are speaking of are not in our jurisdiction, nor do we have any power over what happens there. As far as this area that she was referring to, this is our site, so that's all that we are speaking of. As far as trip generation, we're reducing from 40 townhomes to 26. Therefore, it would be a decrease in traffic of 103 based on the trip generation analysis, a decrease of 6 trip generations in the peak AM, and a decrease in 7 in the peak PM. As far as the stormwater, as one of the neighbors spoke of, we are proposing a retention pond, and we are not, there has been Swift Mud out there to look at the property and EPC, and we did perform a wetland jurisdiction that was certified, and those wetland conservation areas will not be impacted, will not be disturbed. They are indicated on the site plan. Therefore, we're only using part of the 3.1 parcels. About 2 acres of the parcels will be for the development, but the rest will remain undisturbed. And then Mr. Frank DeBose will speak on other matters.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
And I was sworn in earlier. Just want to address a couple issues that were raised by the residents. This is a site that's zoned 440 townhome units. It's almost a remnant parcel of land from the original development that was done. The development was done, most of which finished around 2006. We were taking the site and reducing the number of units from 40 down to 26. A subset of that reduction, as you will see, in the northern parts of the site, there's a little bit of a ditch that runs from the east to the west. It's about 3 feet wide, about a foot deep. So that created an issue with EPC that said that they had to mark where the top of bank started and ended for that site. So when the opposition was saying that there was undue influence with the planners, that was not. I was there with 2 other people. We were talking about where the ditch was, where it was located, and what the setbacks would be. The county, EPC, completely controlled what happened. So what's as a result of that, where the stormwater pond is, what we're doing is creating a nature preserve. We're not building units in there. It'll be set aside for a kind of a nature trail for the residents to live there, as well as a little play area for kids and that kind of stuff. But the whole site, there's some trees on it, but not a whole lot of trees, nothing that's grandfathered in or anything of that nature. We have to replace back all the trees that we're taking out. That's part of the county land use. As for water and sewer and impacts on neighboring developments, that's all stuff that gets permitted through the civil procedures that works with the county. In terms of the changes that are occurring, where DOT is redoing how 301 and I-75 come together, we have nothing to do with that. I think she's referencing some trees having been taken out. That's causing a problem with bats. I'm completely unaware of that, but I'm not living in that area. But that's occurring from DOT. That has nothing to do with our development. I can't remember if there were other issues that you were. Okay.
You have 19 seconds left, sir.
Sir, there's no rebuttal comment. There's no rebuttal comment, so.
Yeah. Okay, we have heard from opponents and proponents. We've heard from our development services as well as a rebuttal from our applicant. We'll open it up for board discussion. Commissioner Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I'm going to move approval. I just want to reassure the residents that I understand what it's like to see zoning signs go up in your neighborhood where you've had a vacant area and think we'd like to keep it vacant, you know, especially where you've seen wildlife from the associated wetlands and forested areas. But the issue before us today is not whether we'll have nothing forever or these 26 townhouses. The property is currently zoned for 40 units. If we, probably in a similar configuration to what your units are, if we were to deny the request to reduce the density, we would be leaving the landowner in a position where their only option is to develop at the higher density in the older configuration according to previous rules. So I'm moving approval because I believe this will result in a better development than what would happen if we did not approve this today. I also want to point out a couple of things that there could not have been, if there was ever sewage backing up here, it's not because this area is not on septic. So there's not drain fields of sewage that could be backing up. Like I heard the gentleman say, if there was an issue with sewage, it would have been because the force main broke in the area and our utilities would have had to come address that. But I'll also just reassure the public that Our EPC scientists are very rigorous in determining the wetland delineation, and so I'm not sure what you people thought they saw happening, but it wasn't a scientist being influenced by somebody in any way to reconsider where the wetland line should be, unless it was in light of some facts. But I'll also point out that the EPC, whatever EPC was doing out there at the wetlands was preliminary. And in the further process of moving towards permitting the development, the EPC, in fact, as they say in their comments here, if the zoning proposal changes and or the site plans are altered, EPC staff will need to review the zoning again. Well, if the zoning changes, but the fact is, EPC is going to be keeping a close eye on those wetlands all the way through the permitting and development process. So to protect the EPC regulated wetlands. So with that, I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, a second by Commissioner Kemp. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Smith, for taking responsibility for explaining it, and I'll just be in support of that. I know it's often difficult for the public to understand that this decision to allow for 40 units has been there for a long, long time, and as Commissioner Smith says, those 40 units, they could have already been built. They could have been built months ago without any notice to you because that process already took place. So what you're being noticed is whether you would support a reduction from 40 to 26, nothing else. We're not approving 26, we're approving a reduction from 40 to 26. So I just wanted to emphasize that, and I know you addressed the others, the delineation of the wetlands by our EPC and the other issues, and we appreciate the public coming and vigorously being engaged. But in this situation, this is what the status of this property is, something that was done, who knows, I don't know how many years ago, but to permit the 40. So we're moving it down to 26 is what we're approving.
Thank you, Commissioner Kemp. And I'd like to just reiterate too, this property, is along I-75. And for someone who actually lives very close to a highway, the water runoff on a highway is significant, which is why the triangle in that corner where that clover leaf is, has a significant water retention pond affiliated with it. Our EPC staff, as this project can move forward, probably has helped the applicant understand that they're going to have, runoff as a consequence of that there, even though there's a large retention pond that 75 provides. Water impacts in that area will be issued, and maybe why the applicant has chosen to reduce the number in order to be able to accommodate water retention and that wildlife that needs to or wants to find a place to be. And when you have that much water, having bats around to eat mosquitoes is not a bad thing. So, except for when they're in your house, obviously. So you don't want that. But I would like to support the project as well. We clearly need houses and townhomes as an accommodation. If they're able to accommodate, a common area or a play area or a water feature in order to address the runoff in that area, I think it would be beneficial to the overall community in some respects. So with that, I'll support the motion, and I don't see any other comments. So please record your vote or indicate your vote.
Chair Overman?
Yes.
Cohen?
Yes.
Hagan?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried, 7-0.
Excellent. Thank you very much. E4.
Next item, Commissioners, is agenda item E4, Prs Application 22-1172. The request is for minor modification of existing plan development. Again, let me go to the Elmo. The parcel is located at the southwest corner of West Sly Avenue with North St. Peters Avenue, west of North Armenia Avenue. Ostensibly, their request, Commissioners, is to modify the number of access points for the project. This is the current site plan showing 4 access points, 3 on St. Peters and 1 on Sly Avenue. The request would be to reduce that to 2, removing the Sly access and have 2 access points on North St. Peters Avenue. Commissioners will note that staff filed a not supported recommendation. Transportation staff advised that while the reduction in number of access points provides for a better, safer situation with respect to the circulation and access points, that because of the lack of submittal of a transportation analysis that's typically required of these type of applications, they could not provide a positive supportable recommendation. That's the basis for staff's not support. We're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant present?
Oops, thank you, Madam Chair and board members. Jim Porter with Ackerman, 401 East Jackson Street. Along with Susan Swift, I'm here representing the applicant today. As Mr. Grady said, this is an attempt to clean up a very old PD from 1988. The proposed changes will result in a safer situation for the public and also allow the site to function more efficiently. I've spoken to both Mr. Gormley and Mr. Grady about the staff report. You'll see in the staff report that staff acknowledges that the reduction of 2 access points will result in a safer project and a better project. There were some issues and miscommunications about the actual process for a traffic study, but we support the staff proposed conditions. Ms. Swift is going to go over the actual proposed changes, but basically the essential thing to remember here is it's a cleanup of a 1988 PD to reduce access points from 4 to 2 to create a safer project. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Swift. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Susan Swift. I'm the Director of Planning for Boggs Engineering, LLC. I'm an AICP certified planner. I'll try to be brief since this, like the Capital One commercial, should be the most minor of minor modifications in the history of minor modifications. But I do want to show you some photos to explain what we are trying to do and why we're here. This is the area, and as you can see on my line, this second black line is the city limits. This is the county, and this on this side is the city of Tampa. This is what is there now. This is the other side of the property. And this is what Mr. Arcady is hoping to get approved today. As Mr. Porter said, this is a renovation of an existing building. This building is there. As you saw in the slides, we'll be providing new doctor's offices at this location. The site's been abandoned for quite a while. It will have new sidewalks already has a sidewalk on Sly Avenue. It will have new sidewalks all along Tampania and St. Peter's. It'll have new landscape buffers. Obviously, it will look a lot better than it does now building-wise. It'll have paved parking instead of dirt. and interior landscaping, new fencing, and the reason we're here is safer access. Why are we here? This is the proposed site plan. Again, we're just cleaning up the site plan. The real reason that we are here is because we're moving the existing driveway on Sly, so there will be no access on Sly Avenue, something that all traffic engineers like. And then there were, in the old PD, there were 3 driveways on St. Peter's Avenue, and we're reducing those to 2 and actually lining one up. None of them were ever lined up. We're lining up the one on the top with the Walgreens across the street, their driveway across the street. As the staff report said, there is no increase in traffic. This is really just kind of a glitch or an oddity in taking an urban built project and trying to make it fit with regulations that may not really apply here. Why are we here with a staff denial? As you heard, this is because we didn't have a traffic study. We weren't told we needed a traffic study until a week or so ago. So we have the staff's own analysis that said this is safer. The traffic is exactly the same. This sheet is from your staff report. I'll go back. This is the Sly. Under the shadow of the trees is the driveway we're closing. And this is St. Peter's, where we will have driveway lined up with the one at Walgreens and then one further down. As you can see, it will be much more improved than the existing site. Oops. There. And as Mr. Porter said, the traffic study acknowledges that, the staff report acknowledges that there's no change in the traffic. It meets all the land development code criteria. It's the staff policy to request a new traffic study, but there's no change on this site, and we are reducing the number of driveways, which will really clean up the site plan and create a much safer project overall. We have no objections with the revised conditions that the staff provided or any new conditions that they have there, and we respectfully request that you all approve this minor modification. Thank you.
Okay, any further presentation by the applicant at this point? I can't see Saunders Library, so I don't know if anybody's approaching the...
No one's approaching.
Okay, great, thank you. With that, we'll open it up for proponent or opponent testimony. Is there anyone present that would like to speak to as a proponent of this item?
No one in the audience.
Are there any persons present to speak as an opponent to this process?
No one in the audience.
Okay, thank you very much. We will hear from Development Services.
Commissioner, make some minor comments. I do agree with what the applicant said of our overall macro findings on this project. We do generally like to have information that can provide the board with specifics about number of trips at driveway locations. That's generally what we like to be able to present for this project. We are comfortable and comfortable with the statement that's in the transportation report that the change in access going from 4 access points to 2, with 1 not being on Sly Avenue, is an improvement over the currently approved project. So, we were not supportive based on the lack of detailed information, but from an overall standpoint, we do not believe that that approval of this project would cause any negative impacts. In fact, would probably better the existing situation.
Okay. I think I understand what you just said, but I'm seeing in the documentation that it's considered not supportable, and yet.
Yeah,
okay.
The not support, it was probably a judgment call there on that. We're used to having a lot of detailed information on number of trips and how many trips will be accessing each access point. That was the basis for not support, not having that information. I'm here saying today I think that that's more of a form over substance recommendation, knowing the trip generation for this project and knowing those 2 access points accessing on local roads. We don't believe that it will cause any negative impact. So I do apologize for the confusion on what I'm saying now and what our staff report says, but I think from an overall standpoint that is our advice to you on this application.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for the clarification. Commissioner Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I'm going to support the project, but I have a couple of questions. You said, or somebody, I guess it was the applicant, talked about some new conditions. A lot of times when we have something coming without a recommendation of approval, we don't have all the conditions settled yet. So if we were to make a motion, if I were to make a motion to approve, which I'm inclined to do we have those conditions, and does that need to be incorporated in the motion?
We have some recommended transportation conditions. So overall, you're correct. When we don't support a project, we don't have a recommended packet of conditions. When we have the individual agency reviews, such as transportation review, those will, and in this case do, include recommended conditions if the project was going to be approved. So I believe the conditions that were referenced are those that start on page 22 of 28 of the backup, and those are the conditions in the transportation report, and they're revised conditions 12, 13, 14, and deletion of some extraneous conditions. So I believe that's what I spoke about with Mr. Porter in terms of the conditions that we would want to see if this was approved. So those are the conditions that would be referenced.
Thank you. And I'll just say that, for me, I very much appreciate the staff recommendation coming this way. We have a process that requires a certain amount of information, boxes ticked before it comes to the board. We have very little time here to review each application. We get a lot of them all at once ahead of the hearings to go through. And I appreciate staff saying, look, you don't come with all the required information. You don't get a recommendation of approval, but we will explain that here at the board level. So I appreciate it. I think staff made exactly the right call in bringing it forward to us in this position. I'd like to say too, though, when something like this comes and we override the staff recommendation, that today we're not setting the precedent saying, okay, everybody, just don't worry about bringing traffic analysis. The only reason I would be recommending approval today is because we had those comments from staff explaining that the staff analysis is that it leaves the site actually safer than it would have been without this rezoning. So this is not like, never mind filling out all those forms of conditions message to everybody else. This is a very unique situation where I'm sure our findings would take into consideration the staff findings. And I'll just also mention that starting this month, we're starting to require an early sufficiency meeting since we've made that change to the Land Development Code recently. So that's probably going to help provide a safeguard against other applicants coming forward with a lack of required information like this, because you'll have that meeting early in the process, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So with that, I'll move approval.
We have a, wait.
I'll move approval
I was going to say,
with
wait,
the
did you want to mention the conditions?
that transportation staff recommended.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Smith and a second by Commissioner Cohen. Commissioner Kemp, you had comments?
Thank you. Yes, and great comments, Commissioner Smith. Yeah, that is all really important. I can totally appreciate what you said. The other, and again, I'll be voting to approve with the conditions, but I was just a little surprised with a newer development, and I'll just say I've been, part redevelopment in the city, and I see this county line right there, and I know exactly where that is. I know exactly the building that's there now. That this redevelopment, and I'm thinking on waters as well, as those areas get redeveloped, that we don't have in place an overlay or something like that parking isn't moving to the back. And because I feel like Sly has such potential as a great street, and as well waters. And so while this isn't, it's only relevant to point out that we're looking at this specific development right here where our county line begins. And I think I'll be interested in the future, I'll just say, and probably coordinating with the city of Tampa to wherever those lines end and begin, that we start having an overlay district, because these redevelopment is pushing there, and I think it would be significant when we're building or doing something new that we look at best practices, which to my understanding would be moving the buildings up close to the street and doing the parking behind. So I'm just bringing that up now because we're looking at this development so closely now and alerting others to that.
And I'll comment to that. I agree that the overlay makes sense in moving buildings forward, but in this particular case, this is a redevelopment of an existing structure, or changing of the existing structure is my understanding. I thought I heard Mr. Porter indicate that it would be just a redevelopment of the existing structure. Yeah, so that wouldn't apply in this case unless it would require us tearing the building down and starting over. So I don't think that's what they're proposing here. Is that correct?
Yes, my understanding is that they're proposing to redevelop the existing structure, make renovations to the existing structure.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. But I appreciate the with the conditions. I think I'll support it in that effort. Commissioner Kemp?
Yeah, and usually there's some standards in terms of when they do these overlays with redevelopment. For instance, if you're going to change the structure by more than 50%, or I don't know, that, I mean, I know that that's the standards we have, for instance, on the overlay district, which is out Hillsborough Avenue, out by Town and Country. There's also one in Brandon, and they usually have some standards like that for the future. So it may or may not apply to this, but because I don't know the particulars, but there's places there, they don't require every place to do that. You're correct, only, but with some standards in place. And I'd like to see what we might be able to generate in this area, because I think it's good for the future.
Excellent. Mr. Gormley? You have comment before we take a vote?
just in general, we do have two overlays, and they do have those elements to it that require, after a certain level of improvement, that the buildings be taken down and relocated on site. There are some pluses and minuses with those approaches, and we'd be happy to have further dialogue with the board on that as appropriate.
Okay, and that does or does not apply in this particular project?
It does not apply in this particular situation.
Excellent. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it. Not seeing any other comment, please take a roll call vote.
Alderman?
Yes.
Cullen?
Yes.
Hagan?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 7-0.
Excellent. Thank you very much. With that, we will move on to our CDD petitions, items E5 through 7. This is a public hearing regarding CDD's petitions, and Mr. Grady.
Yeah, the next item is agenda item E5 at CD 22-0784. It's a petition to dissolve the Palm River Community Development District. The petition has been submitted by the Palm River Community Development District to dissolve the Palm River CDD. The Palm River CDD is approximately 40.55 acres, is located on the north side of Estuary Lake Drive, the south side of Palm River Road, east of Falkenberg Road, and west of Sama Street. Pursuant to Chapter 190.046, Prin 10 Florida statutes, the CDD has no outstanding financial obligations and no operating or maintenance responsibilities. Upon petition of the district may be dissolved by a non-emergency ordinance of the general purpose local government entity that have established the district. Documentation confirming a release of the lien, payment of the bonds, land ownership transfer, and transfer of maintenance responsibilities has been submitted. Based on the information contained in this petition, staff finds the petition meets the criteria outlined in Chapter 190 for dissolution of the CDD. We're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing, and each speaker or anyone that wishes to speak that's been sworn in is given 3 minutes to speak. I have no one on my list to speak. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to item E5?
Yes, Commissioner, this is Scott Steady, District Counsel for the CDD. I'd like to just make a few comments.
Absolutely. You're recognized.
Yes, Commissioners, Scott Steady, Burr and Foreman, Suite 3200, 1 Tampa City Center. I'm the District Counsel. As staff said, and I don't need to go into it in great detail, the bonds have been paid off. All liens have been satisfied. The district currently has no assets, no liabilities. It's basically a shell. The project moving forward does not wish to use the CDD, so would request the approval of the ordinance dissolving the district. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item, please?
No one in the audience.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll close the hearing and hear from the vote. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Can I just ask one quick question? Just typically when something, and I'll move approval, but typically when something like this, when you dissolve a CDD, does that automatically create an HOA, or what? Nothing happens unless the neighbors create an HOA, or how does that transition occur?
Mr. Gormley?
Yes, ma'am. The two are separate actions. Dissolving of a CDD doesn't automatically create an HOA. An HOA would need to be created independently, and in fact, there's scenarios where you could have both existing for the same development. So this would simply, action here would simply dissolve the CDD and have it no longer be an active unit of local government.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any other comments. And we have a motion by, I'm sorry, I missed it. Commissioner Kemp, you made a motion to approve?
Second.
Second by Commissioner White. Seeing no further conversation, please take a roll call vote.
Alderman?
Yes.
Cullen?
Yes.
Hagan?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 7-0.
Excellent, thank you very much. Next item is E6, also a CDD petition.
Yes, the next petition is CDD 22-0914, petition to expand the Spencer Creek Community Development District. The petition has been submitted by the Spencer Creek CDD to expand the CDD by adding approximately 36 acres of the CDD. The revised CDD would encompass 203.85 acres and is generally located between 21st Street Southeast and 14th Street Southeast and south of State Road 674 and north of Interstate 75 in Ruskin. No objections to the proposed CDD were raised. By reviewing agencies, staff finds the application meets the requirements of Chapter 190 Florida statutes to expand a community development district and recommends approval. Or staff's available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing regarding the CDD. Is there anyone that wishes to speak to this item?
Good morning. I'm Mark Straley. I'm the attorney for the district that is seeking this expansion of its boundaries.
And you've been sworn, sir?
I have.
Thank you.
We have staff recommendation of approval. To my knowledge, there is no one in opposition to the petition, but I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Excellent. Thank you very much, sir. With that, if there's no one else present to speak, we'll close the public hearing and hear from the board.
Move approval.
I have a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Cohen, a second by Commissioner White. Seeing no further discussion, please take a roll call vote.
Overman,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Hagan,
Yes.
Kemp, Myers,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 6-0.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next item, E7, CDD 220992.
Yes, the next item, E7 CDD 22-0992, is a petition to expand the Simmons Village North Community Development District. The petition is submitted by Simmons Village North CDD to expand the CDD by adding approximately 75.64 acres to the CDD. The revised CDD would encompass approximately 198.752 acres, is generally located in the west side of Simmons Loop, south of Big Bend Road, east of I-75, and west of US 301 in Riverview. No objections to the proposed CDD were raised by reviewing agencies. Staff finds the application meets the requirements of Chapter 190 Florida statutes to expand the community development district and recommends approval, and staff is available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing regarding this item. Anyone that wishes to speak has 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone present to speak?
Mark Straley, and I'm the counsel also for the Simmons Village North CDD. Again, I'm not aware of any opposition to this petition, and we have a staff recommendation of approval, but I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Excellent. Thank you very much, sir. With that, I will close the public hearing, open it up for board discussion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner White, second by Commissioner Cohen. Please take a roll call vote.
Overman,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Hagan,
Yes.
Kemp, Myers,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 6-0.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, folks, we are at the regular agenda, a public meeting to the land use hearing. We are able to hear a variety of items. And the first item is F1, which has apparently some changes associated with it. So with that, I'll open it up for Development Services presentation.
Yes, the next item is agenda item F1. Is major mod application 22-0089. The applicant's Tampa Electric Company. The request is located on the northwest corner of Bears Avenue and North 121st Street. It's east of Nebraska Avenue and further east of I-75. North of the university area in Lutz. The request is for a major modification of the existing plan development. The existing plan development is approved for over 250,000 square feet of commercial office uses. This modification would amend that to 240,000 square feet of public service facility, communication tower associated with that public service facility, and limited AR use, agricultural rural zoning district uses. As noted in the changes to the agenda at the beginning of the hearing, the applicant did propose a revised condition which clarified the nature of those agricultural rural zoning district uses and also limited specific uses as were read in the record during the changes. They also clarified in condition 1.2 that the security fencing would be a wrought iron style type fence. Staff is recommending approval of this with conditions. It also has a consistency finding by the Planning Commission and approval recommendation from the zoning hearing master, and staff's available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The oral arguments are limited to parties of record, and the applicant has 10 minutes to make oral arguments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Michael Brooks, Shepherd and Rocha. I am here on behalf of Tampa Electric Company with my co-counsel, Rebecca Kurt. We also have in the room with us Daryl Stowe, our ASCP planner, and Links and Associate here. In your backup, you have should have a copy of a very detailed PowerPoint presentation that we made to the ZHM. Unfortunately, we don't have time to make that entire presentation to the board today within the time limit. So I'm just going to hit on some key points. As Mr. Grady mentioned, there have been some changes in your addendum to really clarify and confirm for both the board and the public that the accessory and conditional uses related to the air district will be exclusive to the operation of the public service facility by a public utility. That condition is very similar to condition 11 and the specific limitations on the radio tower itself. And then we also are confirming, consistent with discussions with the neighborhood over many months, that the perimeter security fence will be a wrought iron style federal appearance security fence. So with that, I mean, the highlights that I will just touch on again in that PowerPoint are, there are design features that went into this to protect the existing neighborhood. Location of uses, the radio tower has been located in the southwest corner of the property, furthest away from the neighborhood. The loading docks have been, and the back of house operations are located towards the railroad tracks. There are 2 variants and waivers associated. The first is for the 8-foot security fence that I just mentioned. The second is for shade tree requirements in the parking field, which will allow the employee parking spaces that will be covered to have solar panels above those structures and efficiently capture the sunlight. There is a design exception associated for Sinclair Hill Road. Sinclair Hills is a constrained roadway. It is also substandard, but through engineering efforts that we've identified that a 12-foot multi-purpose side trail can be located on the north side of that road. And given that there's a couple curves in that road, that should be a significant pedestrian safety improvement over the current situation. There are transit improvements that are required. There is protection of a scenic corridor along Bears Avenue. And those are really just the high points. This is as you might gather from the materials in your backup, this is a very important facility. This will be an state-of-the-art operations center for TECO. There will be a critical piece of their infrastructure when dark sky events, which we describe in the backup, days when bad things happen, whether those are storms or man-made catastrophes. And so this would be an important piece of galvanizing the resilience of our electric service here in our community. I know that there's one person who wants to speak in support. Mrs. Fight is from the neighborhood. She has been involved in every rezoning associated with this property, beginning on one that I handled back in 2000. With that, I think she would be your next speaker. I think I did forget to introduce the most important person in the room, which is Kristen Mora from TECO, and Jeff Ogden, who is, she's the in-house land use counsel. and Jeff Ogden, who is the telecommunications manager as well. So with that, if you have any questions, we can go through specific pieces of our prior presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes remaining if either any of those wish to speak. Okay.
Only if there are questions, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. We can now hear oral arguments by proponents or opponents, party of record. If anyone is willing to speak or interested in speaking, if they've been sworn in, they'll need to stay to the record as well as indicate whether they are a proponent or an opponent. I do have for this item one person that is listed, Barbara Fite, I believe it is, F-I-T-E.
Yes, I'm Barbara Fite, 16102 East Lake Burrell Drive, just north of this project. And over the last 22 years, we've had numerous projects proposed for this property. And this one comes the closest to perfection for a transition from our neighborhood, to other commercial areas further south. So the majority of the neighbors are all for it, and we hope Tico will be a good neighbor. And we also want to thank the property owner that has had the golf range there for years, and thank him for giving us a nice golf range.
Okay, there's time left. Is there any other individuals that are party of records that are interested in speaking to this matter? Seeing none, I will move to rebuttal by the applicant, or if there's no rebuttal, Planning Commission staff presentation.
The applicant's coming to the podium.
Yeah. Madam Chair, for the record, just to be clear, there's no information to rebut. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Planning Commission?
Thank you. For the record, Melissa Leinhard, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located within the Office Commercial 20 and Residential 4 future land use categories. The site is in the urban service area and is partially located within the limits of the Lutz Community Plan. The proposed modification meets the intent of Objective 1 of the future land use element by providing growth within the urban service area. And the proposed modification is also consistent with the OC20 future land use category, where the majority of the proposed development will be developed, as the public facilities are permitted in this plan category, and the proposed non-residential square footage does not exceed the maximum allowed intensity. The subject site meets the intent of the future land use element regarding the protection of adjacent land uses through various buffering and mitigation measures. The surrounding development pattern consists of a mixture of uses. There are single-family detached residential located to the east and northeast of the subject site. Light industrial uses are located to the south, with light commercial and the railroad right-of-way located to the west. The applicant has proposed several mitigative efforts to help protect and seek compatibility with the surrounding residential neighborhood. The applicant is placing the more intense commercial uses along Bears Avenue and the railroad, which is consistent with policy direction that states that development of higher intensity non-residential land uses adjacent to established neighborhoods should be restricted to arterials, collectors, and locations that are external to those neighborhoods. The proposed layout of the project will also provide an appropriate transition of intensity from the commercial uses to the west along Nebraska Avenue and toward the residential uses found to the north and east of the subject site. The applicant proposed the buildings to be centered on the property with employees parking to the east and retention ponds to the west and south, with the communication tower either in the northwest or southwest corner of the property. The location of the buildings and the communication tower helps with sound mitigation, and the parking lot acts as a buffer, keeping the buildings as far away from the residential neighborhood as possible. The proposed modification also limits access only from Bears Avenue, which will help with the previous traffic concerns regarding access along 12th Street and Sinclair Hills Road. Furthermore, there is an existing strip of dense vegetation along the eastern border of the subject site, and the applicant has proposed to maintain the viable trees to act as an enhanced buffer and screening of the parking area. All of these mitigative efforts allow the proposed modification to be consistent with the compatibility and neighborhood protection policies. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed modification consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And a summary from the zoning hearing masters?
Yes, the zoning hearing master considered the major modification request before you, which proposes to modify PD 03-1124 to develop a TECO and People's Gas System public service facility in 2 structures at a total of 300,000 square feet with a maximum 250-foot high self-supporting radio tower. The request involves 2 PD variations. The first variation proposes to increase the maximum permitted fence height of 6 feet to allow an 8-foot high fence around the perimeter of the property for security purposes. The second variation requests to install solar array panels over some or all of the parking spaces, which would preclude the shade trees that are required by the LDC. The zoning hearing master found that these variations meet the land development code criteria as they are necessary for security and innovation and could not be accomplished through strict adherence to the current code. The ZHM found that the variations are in harmony with the purpose and intent of the LDC. The zoning hearing master noted that testimony in support of the application was provided at the ZHM hearing from Ms. Feit, a representative of the adjacent neighborhood. Support of the zoning was based on the cooperation of TECO with the neighborhood and resulting changes to the site plan, which included the relocation of the radio tower away from the residential homes and retaining many of the trees on site. The zoning hearing master found that the proposed modification for the development of a public service facility with a 250-foot radio tower serves to provide a secured operations center that will have the ability to communicate with other utility facilities in the region, and found this request to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and the LDC. And for those reasons, the ZHM recommended approval.
Thank you very much. I will open it up for board discussion and consideration. Commissioner Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I'm sure we're all happy to see TECO working to improve the resilience of the system and the response to storm events. I don't know if you could hear in Saunders, Mr. Brooks, but your remarks along those lines were punctuated by thunder here in the boardroom, reminding us how important it is to protect our system against storm events. So I commend the applicant as well for working so closely with the neighbors that you have Ms. Feit coming to spend time with us today to speak in favor of the proposal because having worked on all the details through this and understanding some of the other proposals that have been made in history, it's it takes a lot to come to participate, wait your turn as a citizen, and speak to the board and work with the developers. And it's, you have extra motivation when you're protecting your neighborhood from something bad to oppose it. But it takes really a little more to come down and speak in support. And so I want to thank Ms. Feit for doing that today to help us with our decision and understanding that this is a good project for the neighborhood, and thank the developers or the applicant for working so closely with them that that they would be motivated to do that. I don't think it was mentioned, but I know that it's my understanding, and I just confirmed with Mr. Gormley, that the conditions, since we haven't yet worked out conditions for AR uses that would rein in the opportunities for things like air curtain incinerators and things, that Development Services worked with this applicant to specifically exclude those on this site in the conditions.
Yes, confirm that those are explicitly excluded. Additionally, those conditional and accessory uses in the AR that are permitted are exclusive to the use of this by a public utility. So it's a very constrained ability of uses, but yes, confirmed, air curtain incinerators are categorically not permitted on the site.
Yes, especially important up here in Lutz, to assure everybody about that. And I appreciate the tree planting and the vegetation and everything too, so I'll move approval.
A motion by Commissioner Smith, a second by Commissioner Kemp. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please take a roll call vote.
Overman?
Yes.
Cullen?
Yes.
Hagan?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 7-0.
Excellent, thank you very much. Item F2.
The next item is agenda item F2, rezoning standard 22-0456. The applicant's David Wright. The request is to rezone a 2.56 acre parcel that's located at the northeast corner of Wheeler Road and North Valrico Road from AS1 agricultural single family 1 unit per acre to commercial neighborhood with restrictions being limiting the size of the development to 5,000 square feet. Staff is recommending approval. It is also found consistent by the Planning Commission, and the hearing officer is also recommending approval. Staff is available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will hear from the applicant, assuming the applicant is present. It has 10 minutes set aside for the applicant. Is the applicant present?
The applicant is not present in the audience.
Okay, so we won't hear from the applicant, but I do not see anyone else present that may be wanting to speak as party of record for proponent or opponent. No one present? So given the applicant isn't here, we don't need a rebuttal from an applicant, and we can hear from Planning Commission.
Thank you. For the record, Melissa Leinhardt, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located within the Residential 1 future land use category. The site is located in the rural area and not located within the limits of a community plan. Regarding the rural area, future land use element objective 4 provides for the provides for rural area long-term agricultural uses and large lot and low density rural residential uses. The established standard is that no more than 20% of all population growth within the county is to occur in the rural area. This is to prevent the encroachment of urban or suburban development. While the rural area objective does not specifically address non-residential uses, it does help to set the standards for the type of character expected in the rural area, which includes more interspersed development with larger lots and agricultural uses. The applicant is proposing a restriction to the proposed CN zoning that would limit the proposed non-residential building to 5,000 square feet. This would keep the proposed use in scale with the surrounding rural residential and agricultural character of the area, consistent with the policy direction in Objective 4. Future land use element Objective 16 and its accompanying policies require the protection of existing neighborhoods through the various mechanisms. Future land use element policy 16.1 restricts incompatible land uses through the use of commercial locational criteria by limiting the development in residential future land use categories to a neighborhood scale and by requiring buffering areas and screening devices between unlike land uses. The applicant is proposing a 5,000 square foot limitation on building size, which will keep the future development of the property at a neighborhood scale, consistent with this policy direction. The site meets commercial locational criteria as it is located at the node of a major intersection, which is East Wheeler Road and North Valrico Road, which is consistent with policy direction in future land use element policy 16.1. The proposed zoning of commercial neighborhood restricted is also consistent with this policy direction, as this is a neighborhood commercial zoning district proposed in a residential future land use category. The applicant will also be required to provide for buffering and screening above the land development code requirements per the added restrictions of approval between the proposed CN zoning and the AS1 zoning to the north, consistent with policy direction that helps to ensure compatibility of unlike land uses. This extra screening includes an additional row of evergreen trees planted every 20 feet with an ornamental tree species planted every 20 feet spaced between the evergreen trees. Future Land Use Element Policy 16.2 states that gradual transitions between intensities are necessary as new developments are proposed and developed. The request proposes a zoning district that allows for neighborhood commercial uses. The zoning district, along with the proposed restrictions to building size, additional buffering and screening, and restricted setbacks from the northern property boundary, demonstrate a gradual transition between uses, which is consistent with this policy direction. The proposed rezoning is also consistent with Future Land Use Element Policy 16.3, as it will mitigate for any potential adverse impacts by setting the proposed building back from the residential use to the north, by limiting the size of the building to 5,000 square feet and adding extra screening and buffering. The proposed rezoning is also consistent with Future Land Use Element Policy 16.5, as the proposed use is located at the intersection of two collector roadways. Because the site meets locational criteria, which is policy direction that strives to direct non-residential development to major intersections, the proposed rezoning is also consistent with Future Land Use Element Objective 22 and its accompanying policies related to how to calculate and implement commercial locational criteria. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the restrictions proposed by Development Services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll hear from the zoning hearing master summary.
The zoning hearing master considered the applicant's request for a rezoning to the CNR, Commercial Neighborhood Restricted Zoning District. The zoning hearing master noted that the property is 2.56 acres in size, currently zoned AS1 and designated Residential 1 by the comprehensive plan. The property is located in the rural service area. The applicant has proposed restrictions which will serve to limit the maximum square footage of the building to 5,000 square feet, will require additional planting of a different tree species from the county's approved tree and hedge material list to be planted every 20 feet behind the evergreen trees, and will also require the building to be set back from the northern property line 60 feet or greater. And as the board has heard, the Planning Commission staff has found the request to be compatible with the surrounding area and consistent with the comprehensive plan. The zoning hearing master concluded that the request for the CNR zoning district on the property is compatible with the surrounding zoning pattern and the Residential 1 future land use category, and therefore the zoning hearing master recommended approval.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are on to board discussion and consideration of a motion.
Move for approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Myers, second by Commissioner Smith. Please take a roll call vote.
Overman?
Yes.
Cohen?
Yes.
Hagan?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you very much. We're on to E3. I'm sorry,
next
F3. My apologies.
Next item,
I was
agenda
trying.
item
I was like, we're going to get there. Okay, F3, please. Sorry.
The next item is item F3 is rezoning standard 22-0789. The applicants are Jeffrey and Jamie Peck. The request is to rezone a 0.37 acre parcel from agricultural rural to RDC 12. The RDC 12 will provide for a duplex zoning district, which would allow, based on the acreage of the parcel, a maximum of 4 units, so 2 duplex units each. Based on surrounding development pattern, which includes a multifamily approved to the east across Estevez Drive. Staff did find this approvable and compatible with the area. Planning Commission found it consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the hearing officer recommended approval. Staff's available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do have Mr. Peck actually signed up to speak as the applicant. Is he available?
Yes, I am available. I wasn't sure if I needed.
Excellent.
So
And you've been sworn in, sir?
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. You may proceed. You have 10 minutes.
Mr. Peck, can you please turn on your video?
I don't know how. I'm sorry, my video went off.
It's that start video button at the bottom of the WebEx session.
I was looking at it, but I really could not find it. I'm on my cell phone. on the construction site right now, and I don't have that option.
You had the option before though, right?
Yeah, I did, but something came up and it said a low battery. Sorry. And then I never really found out how to get back on the video, and I was nervous to press the leave meeting button. But I mean, I guess I really didn't have anything to say, but somebody told me that I should be involved with it just in case anything.
Okay, so where are we going to leave this gentleman? Is he able to provide us a presentation? Does he need to provide us a presentation? And does he have to be on camera in order to do so?
I'll look to, if I may, Madam Chair, Ms. Lundgren for an answer to that question.
Yeah, exactly.
We generally do require in this quasi-judicial proceeding to have the applicant, representative, or all speakers on camera.
On camera.
But
okay. Well, so that means we don't have an applicant to be able to present because he's unable to get his camera to work. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
it sounds as though he doesn't really have anything substantive to
Offer
say
at this point.
at this point. If there's any questions, I'm sure the board can address those to him. Generally, that video is required, and in this case, if there is a need to hear from him, I think we can address that and allow him to proceed. But
excellent, thank you very much. Okay, so
Point of order, we just approved an application without the applicant present. So I just wanted to
I was going to
point
say,
that out.
we have the opportunity to move forward with this without having the camera come on unless there's questions that directly need to be opined by the applicant. So with that, thank you very much for being on the line. But we're going to open it up to any proponent or opponent testimony, and I do not have anyone signed up to speak to this item, and it doesn't appear to be anyone in the audience at Robert Saunders. So
That's correct. No one in the audience.
okay, so we have no opponent or proponent testimony. The applicant is not able to offer us a rebuttal at this point, given there's not one necessary. So we'll hear from Planning Commission staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa Leinhardt, for the record. The subject property is located within the Urban Mixed Use 20 Future Land Use category. The site is located in the urban service area and also within the limits of the Seffner Mango Community Plan. The intent of the UMU 20 Future Land Use category is to designate those areas that are urban in intensity and density of uses. The surrounding area is currently in transition to higher intensity and density with a mixture of vacant, light industrial, mobile home dwellings, and single-family residential dwellings. Across Estevez Lane, a recent planned development from 2020 was approved for 3 development options that allows for a minimum of 110 multifamily dwelling units up to a maximum of 348 units, as well as the potential for commercial uses, thus indicating the transitional nature of the greater surrounding area. The proposal meets the intent of Objective 1 in the future land use element, where 80% of growth is to be directed in the urban service area of Hillsborough County. The future land use classification of the site as UMU 20 may allow up to 8 dwelling units on the site, and the original request was for residential multifamily conventional 16. The request was revised to RDC 12 so that the applicant could comply with acceptable buffering and screening standards in the code. Objective 16 and its accompanying policies protect the established neighborhoods and our proposed development be compatible with the development pattern in the area. Compatibility may be achieved through various tools such as site planning, buffering, and screening. As noted, the applicant changed their original request from RMC 16 to RDC 12 to comply with appropriate buffering and setback standards. Policy direction in the future land use element requires that new development, infill, and redevelopment be compatible to the surrounding area in character, lot size, and density. In this case, the proposal is consistent with the general character of the surrounding area, which is transitioning to higher density and intensity of uses. Although the nearby parcels on the west side of the site are currently single-family residential, the density proposed is an appropriate transition from lower density to a higher density going eastward, especially in the UMU 20 future land use future land use category that anticipates this area that will be ultimately urban in character. The proposed development is also consistent with Goal 2 of the Seffner Mango Community Plan, which seeks to provide quality residential development and supports infill development that is compatible with the surrounding area. Duplex units are an appropriate use of the existing parcel that will provide a middle range of housing types that will be adjacent to the future multifamily on the east side. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll hear from the zoning hearing master's summary.
The zoning hearing master considered the applicant's request for rezoning to the residential duplex conventional 12 zoning district. The property is 0.37 acres in size, currently zoned agricultural rural and designated UMU 20 on the comprehensive plan future land use map. The property is located in the urban service area and within the Seffner Mango community planning area. As the board has heard, the Planning Commission staff has found the request to be compatible with the surrounding area and consistent with numerous policies in the plan regarding neighborhood protection. The zoning hearing master found that the request for the RDC 12 zoning district on the subject property is compatible with the surrounding zoning pattern and the UMU 20 future land use category. And for those reasons, the zoning hearing master recommended approval.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will close the meeting and open it up for board discussion, consideration. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized. Nope.
Move
Okay.
approval.
All right, motion by Commissioner Cohen, a second by Commissioner Smith. Please take a roll call vote.
Overman,
Yes.
Cohen? Yes. Hagan?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried 7-0.
Excellent, thank you very much. We're on to the G section. However, both items that were under G were continued. Were those dates, and those dates were established to be continued to December 13th, correct?
Yes, those actions have been taken. I believe we're concluded with our agenda for today.
Okay, we're done with the agenda. We just have commissioner items, staff items, county attorney items, or off the agenda items before we adjourn. Anyone have anything to offer? Seeing none, the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.